Hello, guys, and welcome to this week's version of the CWC Power Shot, where we get together at 12 o'clock every Wednesday, the middle of the week, to get you over the hump and to give you ways to accelerate your career. Today, we are going to talk about how to get to the point where you make your next interview your last interview. And in my background, I must have at least interviewed 1,000 people if I've interviewed one. It feels like, years and years of interviewing. And I've hired over 100 people, probably way more than that. And what I want to help you do today is to really figure out, how do you stand out? How do you really get noticed in such a highly competitive environment and make sure that you are the one to beat, right? And that way you have those job offers, you've got the ability to win. And I want to make sure when we spend our 15 minutes together today that you have got that locked and loaded. So tell me if this sounds familiar. You spend hours, weeks, days toiling over your resume and making sure it's absolutely perfect. And then you spend another 5 or 6 hours on your cover letters, making sure that they're worded properly and that they have all the things they're supposed to. And whether you're directly connected through your networking or whether it's through a job board, you run the gauntlet of the screening recruiters, right? The ones who don't know the job, but they're there to make sure that you don't have 2 eyes or 3 eyes and that you are who you say you are. And then you finally get to talk to somebody who can hire you. And so the date is set, you're ready to go, and then you do your research and you're rehearsing and you're losing sleep and you get all the way dressed and you know it is showtime and you're ready to go. And then this happens. They start asking the same dumb questions, right? Things like, what are your greatest weaknesses? And tell me about yourself. And why are you leaving your company, or why do you want to work here? Tell me your 5-year plan. All of these things that are just so common and so boring. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And so does this happen to you? So for those of you who are live with me, pop it in the chat window and let me know if that sounds familiar to you. Because so many of my clients, when we talk about interviewing and we're doing interview prep, these all the time, and they give people such anxiety. And what I want to do is share with you ways that you can turn the table and take these dumb, boring questions that are even worse when you're in a virtual situation, because now you're over Zoom or some type of WebEx, and it's just really, really hard to get your personality out there. And so I'm going to give you 5 tips on what you need to do to stand out and really make these routine questions fun for you, fun for them, and compelling. And before I give you the 5 tips, I want to share a story with you because I love stories. And so there was a time in my career where I was hiring for a very, very senior level position on my team. And the stakes were really high because I really had a lot of obstacles that I was facing, and success was not, had to happen. I could not fail. So this position was so critical for me. And I had 2 candidates, and on paper, these candidates looked awesome. I mean, their pedigree, their experience, all of those things were exactly what I was looking for. They came personally referred to me by people that I knew and trusted. So I knew that I couldn't go wrong with either one of them. And so as I sat down with the first candidate and we started to go through their resume, I have to admit it, I asked some of those dumb questions, and the conversation was like pulling teeth. And it was awkward and it felt just rehearsed. And, it was really hard to try and build that momentum to make that connection, to really get a feel for where this person was going to show up in terms of being a leader on my team. And we spent about an hour together, which is a long time for an interview. A lot of times you've got less time than that. And we spent an hour together, and I just left that interview feeling exhausted. I was confident the person could do the work, but I just didn't feel that energy, that pep, or anything like that. And then I interviewed the second candidate. Again, these 2 were very, very similar in terms of their background. And this person was high energy and vibrant and asked compelling questions and did some things that really made me think about, what do I really look for, right? And what am I looking for? And what is this person going to bring that I didn't even think I needed? And this person also happened to be $20,000 more than I was budgeted to spend. So both of these people on paper could have done the job perfectly great, and came referred, but you want to guess who I hired? Right? Of course, I hired the person who was $20,000 more. I rearranged some of the open requirements that I had on my team to make room for the money, and I hired the person that really connected with me. I hired the person that I knew I could trust, and I hired the person that I knew actually would make me laugh and have fun at work, because you're there all the damn time, and sometimes it can be soul crushing. And so when you're in an interview situation, you shouldn't feel like you're in a firing squad, right? You should feel like you're in a fireside chat. But oftentimes it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and now that we're virtual, it's even worse. So how do you move from them firing all the questions at you answering them, and then waiting for the next question, to really making it a robust, high energy, positive, fun conversation that they don't want to end? And that way you stay memorable. So I'm going to share with you 5 tips on things that I want you to do. And then I also have a free download for you on a whole training program on exactly how to do this as well. So if 15 minutes isn't enough, hang out and I'll tell you all about the free training that we've got for you. So the first thing I want you to do is, no matter what question you get asked, keep it short. If you don't answer the question in 2 minutes and then ask a question back, you have spoken too long. And so I'll give you an example of what I mean. And I'll use this, my story as a really good example of what they did. So I asked them, give me an idea about, tell me about your background, right? Tell me about the things that you're most proud of in your background. And the first person started, I graduated college and then I did this. And this person had 30 years experience. So I was like, oh, for God's sakes, just make it end. I read your resume. I don't need an entire breakdown of your entire life. Right? The second person told me, I'm a transformation expert and I am excellent at complex global issues and getting them over the finish line. And I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. And so when they did that, then the next question they asked was, I have a long and colorful past. So what parts of my background are most interesting to you? Now, can you see the difference between taking 5 whole minutes to talk about all the crap I've already read in your resume versus, here's my punchline, here's what I'm good at, and which parts of my background do you actually care about? Because then I was able to dive in and say, all right, when you did this project for this company, tell me what your biggest obstacles were and how'd you overcome them? Because it was the thing that was most similar to what I was hiring for. But do you see how the difference between keeping it short and asking a question back can help that dialogue? So instead of reciting when they ask you that dumb question, so tell me about your background, don't start from the beginning, right? Come up with your punchline, your 2 sentences that just punch them in the face with what you're all about. And then say, all right, so I've got a great, deep and colorful past. So what are you most interested in learning more about? And put it back in their court. So remember, every time you're answering those questions, you want to keep it short and then ask a redirecting question so that way they can get more specific and you can really know what they care the most about. The second tip I'm going to tell you is to make every single answer all about them. Now, I know they're interviewing you and you want to highlight your experiences, your accomplishments, and all of your things so they hire you. But the reality is, unless you give them the confidence and the assurance that you are going to be the person that is going to get them what they want in their career, you will never get hired. Because when people hire you, it is the biggest buying decision that they make, not using their own money. And so when you think about, okay, that position that I was in where the stakes were high. And so from that perspective, I couldn't lose. That person had to be able to help me be successful, or all kinds of terrible things was going to happen. So I cared less about what they could do and more about the results they could deliver so I could achieve my goals. Everybody is the same way. So instead of saying, I'm a project manager, and I worked on, 17 projects in my career and they've all come in on time. Instead of saying that, what you want to say is, my superpower is I'm a PM that can pull any project out of the crapper. And as it turns out, my last 3 bosses got promoted because of this skill. And then zip it. And then have them come back to you and talk about what they're interested in. So you see how that's different in how you make those answers all about them. And then the other thing is you have got to make it conversational. And sometimes people who are doing the interviewing don't help. So you have to do it yourself. And there's a 4-step process that I recommend. It's where you answer the question, validate that you've actually answered the question that they've asked, because a lot of times you either misheard it, didn't hear it, or they didn't say it right, and you're answering a question that they didn't care about. And then once they say, yep, that's what I'm looking for, then what you want to make sure that you do is ask another question and then relate to their answer. So here's what I mean by that. If they talk about, tell me about your transformation experience, that was my expertise. I'm like, okay, I transformed this into this. Then I'm like, did that answer your question? And if they say, yes, absolutely, then my next question would be, how does what I just told you relate to what you're looking for here? And then let them answer. And then when they say, oh my goodness, it's exactly like what we've got going on over here, then I can relate and say, absolutely, I know your pain, I've been there. And then all of a sudden you're in a conversation. You're not in this tennis match of lobbing one ball after another. And so make sure that you use that 4-step process to have that high quality bi-directional interview. And then step number 4 is I want you to be high energy. I want you to come out strong, have that really, positive virtual handshake, kind of come through the camera like I am with you right now, because I'm excited about this. And I want you to be excited about this too when you're doing your interviewing. And so you want to make sure that you are high energy and that you're up and you're ready to go. Now, a lot of times, especially if you hate your job or you're unemployed or you're just in a funk, it's really hard to come across as that high energy person because you get in your head, which is a dark and scary place. And so what I want you to do is play your anthem song before it's go time. So 5 minutes before it's time for your interview, I want you to pick your anthem song and play it as loud as you can and get in that moment. Because when you're in that moment, it is contagious. And even if the person who's interviewing is having the shittiest day ever, when they see that positivity, the energy, the optimism, and all of that stuff coming through that camera, I am telling you, they will start to smile and they'll start to feel that energy too, and they'll start to mimic you. And then the last thing I want you to think about is the 5th step is to make them smile. We should not feel like this is going to the dentist for a root canal, right? And interviewing is as soul crushing for the people who are doing it as the people who are being interviewed. It's just something no one loves to do. And so from that perspective, make it fun. Make it, make them smile, make them laugh, treat them like you're just meeting somebody for the first time at a bar, and you don't want to be that casual, but it's that same idea, is that you can completely have a good conversation with a random stranger and share some laughs. And so I want you to find your authentic way to use humor and to use your personality to make them smile and make them laugh, because that is what is going to make you memorable. And when you're talking about being put into groups of, 15, 20, 30 people that are making it for the first round, you got to be memorable. And that's the best way to do it. Okay, so keep it short. Make sure that you make it all about them. Make sure that you have that that 4-step bi-directional interview process. And then make sure that you have high energy and that you make them smile and that you make them connect to you in a personal way. Those are the things that stand out from people who get hired and people who don't. And it's really that simple. So I've got a ton of other tips that I have for you that are included in a free training video. And so it's in the link in this post, and it's called How to Ace a Virtual Interview. And in this training, what you're going to learn are the 10 things that you need to do to prep for a virtual interview. There is nothing worse than having technology screw up and then having you late or flustered or any of that crap, right? So these 10 things, if you do it every time, you'll never have to worry. And then I'm also going to break down that 4-step process on how to have that bi-directional interview for you, so that way you really know exactly how to apply it to your specific situation. And then I'm also going to share with you 3 things that I guarantee you're not doing. And you must do these 3 things if you ever expect to get a job offer. And so I want you to click on that link in this post, look at that training video. There's Q&A that's after it that you are going to learn a ton from, and really get ready to make your next interview your last interview. So I'm Tammy Alvarez, and the creator of the Career Winner Circle, where we help business leaders make a big impact and love their jobs again. And I am so glad that you're here with me today or watching the replay. Make sure you do a thumbs up, subscribe, tell your friends about this, and send me an email and let me know what you thought about the training video. I'll see you next week.